Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Web Performance, CDN, and Caching on my YouTube channel, Tech with Peter Mbanugo. And today I've got another special guest that I'm proud to have because he was also there during my first set of stream when I started this YouTube channel and stream. And we had a brief conversation on YouTube about CDNs, and I'm happy to have him to talk more about it. So, welcome, Alex. Alex is the founder of Skip2 Networks, and they have their own CDN network, which I think also storage services. And yeah,
Right.
I'll let you introduce yourself, give us a bit about yourself and Skip2 Network before we dive right in.
Yeah. My name is Alex Lee, like you said, the founder of Skip2 Networks. Been doing kind of the traditional networking stuff for a while, and I'm building Skip2 actually on the side. So I still have a day job. I work in the Network Operations Center at the University of Chicago most of the time, and then nights and weekends I'm out here kind of building something on my own, which is really exciting. And I just love anything. I've been hosting websites for probably 15 years now, at least. And so I've seen how things have changed, and I think I have a cool shot at creating something that's really cool that developers are going to like.
So you're an expert at networking then.
Oh, whoa, no. Wouldn't say expert. No. But no, I really have learned a ton. I've been building and working on Skip2 for a little over 2 years.
Oh, okay.
And just focused completely on HTTP, and then I kind of worked my way down each layer to understand how each layer of the internet, kind of interacts, the OSI model kind of interacts. So yeah,
Oh, no.
I just love this stuff.
Are you doing this alone, or you have some people that work with you?
I've got a couple of friends who help out here and there, but for the most part, it's just been me so far. So.
Oh, interesting. And why the urge to start Skip2 or the CDN product or business?
Well, I was looking. I've always been entrepreneurial, and I was looking at building something of my own. And one industry that's been around for over 25 years is CDN, and I haven't seen a ton of, I don't know, a ton of innovation, right? It's like they build a CDN and then they put stuff on top of it, and it's not really about the CDN anymore, right? It's about all the extra features and you can run your application on our CDN or whatever it is, and that's sort of the way the industry's gone. And I think there's a good part of the market that's just looking for excellent CDN services.
Oh yeah.
Um, and so, I mean, that's it. And there's just not very many competitors in the space. It seems to be something that's hard to build, I guess. And I like stuff that's hard to build.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how, what you talked about the CDN. I had Robin Max from Akamai, I think 2 streams ago,
Yeah.
and he talked about how the CDN is evolving at the moment. Initially it was just distributed like content with point of presence, and now you have them like people adding like um, security, extra services, and things like edge workers. And
Mhm.
the new evolution we are seeing now, it's more like people that are also adding things to build like full stack application on the CDN network, like Cloudflare with what they are doing with they're adding queues, they're adding SQLite databases, and
Mhm.
now what you call the CDN in their or in his own terms is like getting broader. So I'm curious, in your opinion, when you say there's not much innovation or you see them doing different, what you see, how you would define a CDN
Yeah.
in today's world, but also how you see it evolving.
Okay. Yeah. I think CDN, and that's content delivery network. I think that is any network that is designed, sorry, this is going to be silly. Any network that's designed just to deliver content. That's the point of it. It's not a network that connects people all around the world or something like that. It is designed to deliver content from one location to a whole bunch of other locations. And I think that like when we look at adding on edge functions and databases at the edge and all of these different things, it's not really, it's like the CDN's the tool that Cloudflare or Fastly or whoever is using to build all of these other that's completely separate things, right? Because you're not really thinking about CDN if you're running out an application at the edge anymore. That's
Yeah.
completely out of your mind, but you're using it. You're using somebody else's CDN. You know, it's
Yeah.
just not about that as a product now. It's about something new and something different. And I think all of these things are really cool. The edge functions and anything that you can do to distribute computing even more, you know, and get different parts of the application and different parts of the network. I think it's really, really awesome. I just don't think it's for everybody.
Yeah.
And I think it can add a ton of complexity. And I think that I think there's been a lot of people who have forgotten that you can actually run a really good, efficient, fast web application, but with, you know, your a couple of virtual machines in a database or in a data center somewhere, and one's your app and one's your database, and then you put a CDN in front of it, and you'll see incredible performance doing that. It might be even better than what you get running it as an edge function, you know?
Yeah.
But it's just so much hype around serverless and so much excitement. That's the least option for everybody, you know? Um, so it's hard. CDN, I really think it is the tool. And I think that that tool can be used to run functions at the edge, run different things, and you know, maybe change data in transit, and maybe mitigate, you know, DDoS attacks and things like that. But at the heart of it, it's just this core bedrock foundational part, you know, foundational part of what they're selling now as a product.
Yeah, I think the line is getting blurry, with all this. I think of it also like the serverless movement, Initially, I think it was just especially focused on Lambda, and then later you had other services, managed services from AWS, and over time, uh, it started evolving, and then serverless seemed like a marketing lingo. So everything that is managed became serverless, even if it's not actual serverless as how it started, but now it became a marketing lingo. You could start maybe managed services, you called it serverless. Everybody started renaming to call them self-server. So I think now, the lines is getting blurry. And
Yeah.
recent developers, I think they would not really know when they think of CDN, they just think of probably maybe things like Cloudflare or Fastly, because you can now run edge functions on it. There's you just see it when you compare running application on your own server. You just imagine, oh, I want to go world scale and I want to use CDN, and then you think of edge workers, and then you now imagine database. And I'm sure somebody is going to ask you, Alex, do you have database on your services? So yeah,
Yeah.
it's
And I think we would proudly look at that and be like, no, we don't run a database at the edge. No, it's like we are just that CDN layer. And there's features to be provided there, but it's just like we want to, as Skip2, we want to really say, kind of draw the line in the sand and be like, we're going to be the best CDN, period. And we're not going to focus on everybody else right now.
yeah, and I think it's kind of like a lie as well when you say you are running database at the edge. So let's take Cloudflare as well, for example, when with the D1 database that they say is edge database. It's actually
Mhm.
not edge because it runs on one location, and your request you has to go to that location. Maybe they have read replicas across the globe, maybe, but the last time I read about it and the discussion, it was more like it's just a central location and it's not globally distributed. Maybe
Okay. Yeah.
the key value store that they have, yes, that one is globally distributed. So there's a central primary location where when you do a write, it has to go there first and then, push it out to the other um, locations at the edge. But for the D1, it's still not edge. But then the marketing term was edge, and people believe that. So when you
Yeah,
compare it with other, if you have a database where you have multiple read replicas and you compare the performance, you can see that you get better read throughput compared to doing it on D1. Maybe it will
okay.
change in the future, but those are, I think, the blurry lines, and marketing
Yeah.
to get people to uh, move over to your service. Yeah, and
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
yeah,
I maybe they're gonna say, well, even though it has to go back to some central location, you go to our edge pop, and then your request travels from our edge pop through our network all the way to that location. And that might be Cloudflare's argument there, is that you're still hitting the edge first, but you still like have to travel the rest of the way. It's not like you're storing in this case, it's not like you're storing that at the edge. But
yeah.
that might be the argument there. Um,
And I think I
I don't know.
missed.
It's mhm.
Sorry, go on.
I don't know. I was just gonna say, I think so much of the marketing terms that have been so misused for so long, like edge and even CDN or cloud or whatever, it's just so confusing now. It's just so
True.
blurred lines is yeah, it's not even the start of it. So
Yeah, but then when you've been in the game much longer, and like you have 15 years experience or more, I've also been doing web development for more than a decade now as well, maybe 11 or 12. So you see,
yeah,
like, we remember how it all started, and we don't get scared of deploying on virtual machines, or I
that's
mean,
right.
serverless is fine, but um,
Yeah.
those things. So for you with the CDN, do you also consider storage as part of it, or like
So
with the
no, I
object
do
storage?
consider that. I do consider that kind of an additional feature. But the reason that we did want to add storage is just because we wanted it to be really easy to start serving data over the CDN. So
Okay.
to upload to the storage, you can actually just drag and drop in our interface.
Ah,
Um,
okay.
and that there was some other, I don't know what service it was, or what, it might have just been one of the serverless companies out there where it was just drag and drop your folder. And I went and I did that, and that user experience, I was like, oh, that was great. I gotta implement that, because that was just so it there's extra features and there's little things that I've decided that, you know, would be ideal to have as a part of, that would be something I'd be happy to pay for as a part of my CDN services. Um, but the core part of that, the core part of the CDN is just delivering the content, caching the content, um,
And
securing it with SSL.
oh, cool.
Mhm.
And how would you like? Why? What in your own terms? If you're talking to folks now, we've looked at what the CDNs are. How they started, but how would you say why you should use that? Like the reason, maybe from a business perspective, or just from a developer perspective.
Sure. Well, for a developer perspective or business, I mean, it's going to increase performance. It depends on what you're doing now. Disclaim it with that. If you're deploying on serverless, the difference between your serverless and your VPS with a CDN, it's going to be a little bit different, but it's probably not going to be that noticeable, right? You're going to be able to get away with it. From a financial standpoint, we all have seen countless horror stories now about Vercel or AWS or Google or Heroku or Netlify, whatever. There's so many who have all had these astronomical bandwidth bills come in. Maybe they had a good week and they got posted on the front page of Hacker News and like, oh man, it was riding that high, and then they got the bill and it was like, crazy bandwidth fees. So as CDN, we have to be really competitive with how much we charge for rates, and it's much lower. What CDNs in general charge is going to be much lower than what the major cloud hyperscalers charge. And that doesn't matter if it's a serverless or if you're just running an EC2 instance. I think Amazon, the last I checked, their retail pricing for like a terabyte of egress is like $90 or something a month. It's crazy. It's baffling the amount.
Yeah, I
And so if
think.
you put a layer, between, you've got your EC2 instance or whatever it is, and you've got your customers over on this side, and right here is the layer of CDN. And if you can have a CDN that's working correctly and caching so much data, these requests come in from the user, and they hit the CDN first, and the CDN can respond and say, hey, out of these 40 requests that were just sent by this user, we actually took care of like 36 of them. And then the CDN only forwards the request that it actually needs to. And I think that the bandwidth reduction, the money you can save there is huge.
Yeah. And do you think you would need this? So if you don't have customers around the world and you're not worried about that, do you think you need to also use a CDN in this case? Or if you just maybe say if your customers are based in the US and you just deploy to a few regions or data centers in the US, and that is just fine?
Either way, I mean, I think you should, when you identify a problem, if you've got customers who are complaining, or if you notice your page is loading slow and you'd like to do something to fix that, I think that's when you should start looking at CDN or looking at some kind of other thing to help with that. We've been calling ourselves a web acceleration platform, right? And it's all about trying to speed things up and make it faster. And maybe you want to focus on that as a developer. Maybe you want to run your own servers that do the encoding and that can identify the code and that can run your image transformation, whatever. Maybe you want to do all that, or maybe you don't. And maybe you'd rather just put it on a CDN.
Yeah, with the whole confusing lingo, I think I prefer web acceleration. But then, in order to sell it, I think it's better to say it's a CDN.
I know.
Yeah.
We'll see.
So today we want to focus on how to build a CDN, and I would like you to talk about it. But maybe we before we go into how Skip2 does it at the moment, maybe on a high level, the different components, because I know on a high level there are different things that are involved, but then you can implement it differently based on different tools and technologies you choose. So maybe walk us through the high level part first.
Yeah. When you're trying to serve traffic to people all around the world, the first thing that you need is server space in places wherever you want to go. And we've got a lot of different hosting providers that you can use now, and you can go spin up a virtual server, and very, very little work, very, very little work and very, very little money. And you could have servers, you could have 4 POPs in the United States. And you could just install Apache web server on those, and you could upload your site to each server. And then you could go there's a few different options for routing traffic. Usually it's DNS is the easy way to do it. And you can use different DNS tools to say, hey, if you're closer to this POP, we'll route you over here. And in essence, that is kind of the simplest way that you could build a CDN. It's just a web server. It's a copy of your website or a copy of data that you want to serve. And then you have some way to tell users, hey, when you come to my website, we're going to route you to this POP or this POP. The highest level is really just it's just serving data. It's just a bunch of web servers. And then when you start to add in different components, because let's talk about how inconvenient that would be if every time you made a change to your site, you had to FTP into 4 different web servers and manually copy file. Oh gosh, what a pain. So then you say, well, I'd like to maybe just have one web server and just have, one main web server, and then have a handful of caching web servers, right? And that's going to add a little bit more complexity, but really it's just, you have the same web servers and you add caches to them, right? You add in some way, Apache traffic server. I know you've talked about that.
Yeah.
Nginx has a caching module. There's all different, all these different open source projects that offer modules that basically look at the HTTP data and determine, can it be cached? Should it be cached? As it's being served, and then it'll save a copy if it can. But I think at highest level, it's just that. It's just getting people to the nearest, the nearest location and serving them traffic as quickly as possible. We want to respond as quickly as possible, and we want to get their traffic back to them. We don't want it to go, back upstream as much as we can.
And for this, for the like network routing based on the IP, I know you mentioned DNS, but I looked at this, I think last month a bit, and I saw things like geo IP. I I also read a bit about Anycast, and I feel like I think I also saw something about BGP networks or IPs, and I don't know how they all fit together, So, but for in this perspective, like, are those different options, or do you have to use them all together?
No, they're different options. That's a really good question. There's two effective ways to route people on a CDN, we'll say. The first is DNS, and so we use Constellix is the website, constellix.com. That's run by DigiCert, and they offer really powerful, flexible DNS services. There's another one called NS. Yeah, Constellix. Here, I can put it in that YouTube chat too.
Oh yeah.
And they offer what you would call GeoIP DNS. Okay, and that basically what that is they receive a request from an IP address, and that IP address says, I'd like to have the IP for skip2.net. And they look at that IP address that the request came from, and they actually compare it with a GeoIP database like MaxMind or whatever, and say, okay, with some level of confidence, this IP address is located in Chicago, so we're going to return the IP address for Chicago. And that's all GeoIP. That's practically all GeoIP is they just look at who's requesting the IP address, what IP is requesting it, and then they kind of guess its location, and then try to serve the nearest location back.
So do you? I guess you then configure on Constellix probably for different region which IPs to serve.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
I mean, so by IPs, I mean like your own server IP.
Right. So like if you were to continuing on with our little idea of building your own kind of little CDN with a few VPSs and a main server, with Constellix, you actually just punch in the IP address of the server. So let's say you had a server in Seattle, and that was supposed to be a caching server. You put up the IP address for that server, and then you put in the coordinates for that server, or for Seattle, or for that data center, however you want to do it. And Constellix will just do a proximity comparison for all the locations you have, and just return that back.
Oh, I think that's interesting. I never heard of them, but I just know that there's like you need a way to route, the traffic and all.
Yeah, so DNS is one way, and like I said, we use Constellix at Skip2. There's NS1 has a service that's similar to this. Rage4 Networks has a service that's similar. But then there's also, other than DNS, there's what's called Anycast, right? What's called BGP Anycast, and that's involving BGP. That's the other way. That's how Cloudflare runs their network. Okay,
with Anycast. Yeah.
With Anycast. And the way Anycast works is that Cloudflare is able to use the same IP address they can return the same IP address for every DNS record that they want. But when your computer, your router, says, okay, we have to send this packet to Cloudflare's IP, it goes to your ISP's router, and your ISP, because of how BGP works, is going to look at that and say, oh yeah, we're right next to Cloudflare, right? We have a peering interconnection with Cloudflare. And so because Anycast, the way Anycast works, it'll by IP address route you to the nearest location. BGP is really kind of a complicated topic, but it's something I'm really excited to get into. Skip2 is not using Anycast right now, but we will. The problem with Anycast is just that it's quite expensive
I see.
deploy. Yes.
And because I know, I think Cloudflare uses Fly.io also uses Anycast, and that was where I think I got to hear about it first. Okay,
That's right.
so I think it's easier also if we, hear more about it from how Skip2 does it. Maybe you want to go deeper into it and show us how this all works.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I share this picture here?
Yeah, I
Let's see.
think there should be a share chat. Yeah.
How's that?
Um, that shows out fine. Maybe you need to zoom in a bit so
Oh, I
that
see
it's
the
clear.
problem. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
fine now. Yeah, I think that's fine.
All right. So we've already kind of talked about, you can see this big section in the middle. Can you see my mouse?
Yeah, I see it moving.
Okay, good. I didn't know if that was included. So in our little scenario where we're talking about, this is where your web server is actually hosted. It's this origin is what everybody calls them. Okay. And your origin, that could be a server sitting in your basement, a server sitting in your corporate data center. It could be an EC2 instance. It could be a VPS somewhere. It could be on Vercel or Heroku. It could be a Docker container. It doesn't matter. It could be a Pika-pod, which is a really cool little open source hosting service. It doesn't matter because CDN, for the most part, anybody should agree that CDN is compatible with any HTTP traffic. Okay, and that's the HTTP, that's the protocol itself, and that's defined in the RFCs that you were talking about on, I think it was the last stream or the stream before.
Yeah.
And those are, everybody has to follow that. So we can say that we're compatible with literally any HTTP traffic, and we try to test as much as we can at Skip2 to be sure. Like Skip2.net runs on Netlify, but we proxy it through our CDN. Same with our blog that actually runs skip2.net/blog actually runs on Vercel, and it's a separate thing, but we just proxy it through our CDN. So this big
But how
section in
does
the
the
middle.
proxy work? The request comes through Vercel and then goes to your network, or it comes first through your network and then Vercel?
So it comes through first our network. Yeah, for our network first. So here we'll get into that right now. So
Okay.
let's say one second. Okay. I'm going to share. You can't see the window on top of that one, right?
No.
I didn't think so. So I just want to show you this. I'm going to share a different screen.
Okay.
And it's kind of small. I don't know. I guess I should have prepped better. I'm trying to get a terminal window up on this quickly.
Probably when you share screen, maybe you can pick a terminal, I guess.
It's just that you won't. I don't think anybody will be able to read it. It's just too small looking.
Maybe zoom,
Okay, but
do a zoom of font zoom on your terminal.
I tried. It wasn't
Okay.
working. I'm still on Windows 10, and I think
Ah,
Windows 11. That's a feature of Windows 11. Oh gosh, what a mistake. Okay, I'll see if I
that's
can paste it
still
somewhere else.
Windows 10. I wanted to say that's still old, but I was thinking of Windows 7. That was the last Windows I used before I switched to Mac.
I do prefer Mac. I really do. Here in the YouTube chat, I'm gonna paste an NS lookup. Okay, and NS lookup is a tool in command line you can use to basically run a DNS query, right?
Are you on the right chat? Because I don't see it popping up. I know you posted something previously, but I didn't
It was
see
just on the YouTube chat
it. Oh,
on YouTube on the stream.
yeah, I'm also checking that, but let me switch to live chat. I couldn't find.
Yeah, too many different windows here. And you can also, if you want to open terminal or I guess on Mac it'd be terminal, you can run a dig.
Okay.
But point is, if you go and you do NS lookup from wherever you are, and you do NS lookup cdn.skip2.net, it's going to return to you the address nearest to you, right? And so when you look up, let's say alexjoelee.com, that's my personal website, and that's proxied through Skip2. The very first thing you go, NS lookup alexjoelee.com, the first record that comes back is actually cdn.skip2.net. So then your computer says, okay, I'm going to look up cdn.skip2.net, and then we return the IP of our servers closest to you. So your request then goes from your browser to Skip2 servers, wherever that is closest to you. And we can go back to the diagram here. So there's these, that's what we call edge servers. And where that can be, for our purposes, an edge server can be anything from a VPS that we rent, or it could be a dedicated server, could be something bare metal, or we could literally go and rent a half cabinet at a data center and bring in our own hardware, and we could do it no matter what. We're compatible. We can scale it down to being a little tiny thing, or scale it up really big. And this edge server, all it is it's running FreeBSD, is the operating system. And we run Caddy web server, and we run it with some added modules. Caddy has the ability to add modules similar to how Nginx does, but you generate the Caddy binary with the modules installed. And then one of those modules is a cache module, for example. So a lot of the magic happens right there at the edge, where we can cache it, or we can do all sorts of other stuff, all sorts of other useful things with Caddy to affect that HTTP traffic. But then go ahead.
So this edge server actually does like I would say reverse or forward proxy to the destination, and then based on the HTTP cache semantics, it decides if you should cache it on that particular server that's serving the traffic or not.
That's right. Yeah. So the request comes in from the user, it goes to the nearest edge server to you, and then anything that's already cached here, anything that's static, anything that doesn't change, it'll be cached in the database, and it'll get returned here. And so then our client won't actually have to fulfill that request. They won't actually have to send that data back to us, right? We'll literally respond to it right here.
No.
And then, the origin server won't see that request, doesn't need to see that request. And then anything that is dynamic, anything that doesn't have a good cache header, anything that is a document that changes, that, there's different formats of documents that go over for HTML, will have to forward that request to the origin server, and then they'll respond, and we'll flow it right back down through our network. But the whole thing is wrapped in our network. Yeah.
And I think for the caching part, if I'm not mistaken, some CDN, they do something beyond just what what you specify in the caching header. So maybe they look for more stuff and they decide to cache that, or ignore some caching semantics. I think that's how some CDNs behave.
Yeah, I think that is true. That's kind of a slippery slope. You can kind of mess up websites if you're not careful, right? If you're caching the assets and the user doesn't expect that can get risky. But for us, the user has the option to override whatever their caching header is. So you can go into Skip2 and say, for all images, cache them for 10 years. Doesn't matter. You can put whatever you want in there, and we'll honor that. So you have the ability to override it, but we do not do that by default, just because I think that might be kind of risky.
Yeah. I would like to also clarify something. I know you mentioned this edge server. Another term I see with the CDNs is also saying POP, point of presence. So would you also define this edge server, consider this edge server to be a POP, or how do you differentiate what a POP is?
Good question. A POP is it's where the edge servers are going to be located, right? So the only reason I wouldn't say an edge server is a POP is just because we might have more than one edge server at the same POP.
Okay.
So you might have. So a POP, I mean, that's literally. It's tough to describe that without being
Should we
really
just call it
technical, but
a
I guess I mean, it's it's a data center rack, or it's a data center room. It's somewhere that you have equipment running, somewhere, and it's connected to some network. And that's tough to describe. But if you think about it, there's data center facilities all over. Um, and you could go and rent a cabinet, and you could install a router in there, and then you could go to the internet exchange that's in your data center and say, hello, I'd like to purchase an internet port. And then you could call that a pop,
Oh,
and
I see.
that'd be the start of it, right? But it's also fair for us, I think, because our purpose is serving data, and as long as we are serving that data, I think it's fine to say that a couple of virtual servers is are make up a pop. A handful of virtual servers or something make up a pop for us.
Oh, so I get it. So I'm trying to rephrase this in a different way. There's data center which host like a lot of machines, and then different vendors can purchase different spaces within the data center. And then
Exactly. Yep.
you buy like a space, and then you set up the networking, and then you get like like a port or an IP, like you say, and that is a pop.
Yeah.
And then the each individual like server that or web server that run at that pop, we refer to as edge servers.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Okay, I think that makes sense, because I've also been thinking of a way to say, sometimes in the beginning I imagine, isn't a data center the same as a pop? Why do they have to have different terminologies? But this makes it interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I understand that. And I think a metaphor I like to use, or a comparison I like to use, is if, at least here in America, we have Amazon everywhere. We have Amazon packaging trucks and distribution centers, big warehouses with the Amazon little smile on it everywhere. Um, the reason that Amazon can offer overnight delivery on like tens of thousands of products to most of the people in America is because they keep a cache of those products near the people who want to buy them.
Yeah,
I mean, they're doing CDN, but they're doing it the physical way, right?
it's,
They're doing logistics and distribution. That's what they would call, right?
yeah, that's
But
quite
that's
an
another way you can
interesting.
think of it.
That's
Yeah,
quite
yeah.
an
That's
interesting way
another
to
way to, yeah.
describe it. Because I was talking to a friend today. How Amazon was initially, quite slow at delivery when the Brexit thing happened, and now they are much faster. And I think,
Yeah,
yeah, now they have their own warehouse. So even as a vendor, you can ship your product to their warehouse, and then when you get an order, someone in the factory there can just pick it up and do the
yeah.
delivery. You know,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Oh, that's
And
real
that's
world CDN.
yeah, I mean, we just do that on the virtual level, right?
Yeah, cool. I think there are more things you want to show off in the diagram.
Yes. Yeah, let's see. So, I mean, the rest of this is kind of if you wanted to log and and kind of probably if you want to offer a commercial option. If you're just building a CDN for your own company or for some friends or whatever, you wouldn't necessarily need all this extra stuff that I'm about to go through. But this is what enables us to actually have a product and charge money and stuff. So here's where our clients are on this diagram, right? And they interact with our front end web application, which is still in development. Uh, and that's like when you would log into the control panel. Okay, that's where you set up your sites. All that does is it writes to a SQL database. Okay, and so that's able to just write to that database, and it has ownership over it. And then separately, there's another application that I've written in Go that reads from this database and converts it from just the database format, which was I kind of designed the database schema and format here to just be easy for me to write the front end application, because that made the most sense. And then this configuration management, I call it the director, reads from that SQL database, and it generates a caddy file, which is a caddy configuration file. And it just does this on an interval, just regularly. And then there's some testing that happens, and then we push it out to all the edge servers. We have a pull. We call it a pull there's a word for this. Our edge servers pull a central repository every minute for configuration changes. So it's
Oh,
they're each pulling configuration data on an interval, trying to say, is there anything new? Is there anything new? And so that's how our edge servers stay up to date. Because you imagine we have lots of edge servers all over the place, so
is this
they all need to
peculiar
stay up
to
to date.
Skip2, or is this how some other CDNs also work?
I'm sure some other CDNs work this way too, by doing it up, kind of having the edge servers pull configuration data regularly. Um, I don't know, I know Fastly actually has something really cool that I listened to about it on a podcast, and I think they're able to use multicast or broadcast to update their configuration. So their configuration updates are like real time. There's like 10 milliseconds to global propagation, which we're not that fast. We're like maybe about a minute to global propagation, which I think is okay. That's okay for now.
So
So,
maybe they
we'll
use
improve.
something like maybe they use some kind of queue to
Uh,
like broadcast, and then when they get the broadcast, they just download the file and run it rather than every minute.
well, they're able to use most communication, most IP communication is called unicast communication. Like my IP goes to the server IP and gets the data. It's one, but it's one to one. It's unicast, and that's the name of it is unicast. And I think it was Fastly who they discovered a way to use multicast, where you're able to say, I'm the configuration server, and I'm going to push configuration data out to like 10 servers at once. And it's able to do this by sending one stream of data. It's some pretty cool, pretty magical stuff to keep things up to date in real time like that. Um,
Which company did you mention? Fastly?
I think it was Fastly. I think it was them that came up with that system.
Yeah.
Because I mean, and we're really at the point now. The internet's so good, hosting is so good, cloud is
Yeah.
so good that we're limited by physics. Like we're limited by how quickly a little flash of light can go down a tube of glass down the highway. That's our current biggest limitation as developers.
So, a question about the Cadify. Do you generate this Cadify for just like each application? I don't know how it's defined in Skip2, but let's say each application I want to host, it has their own Cadify, or is it each customer or account or organization have their own Cadify?
So it's one caddy file, and that's like the entry point. But we split the configuration out into a ton of different directories and folders and stuff. So very similar to how Apache and I think Nginx kind of come out of the box. We use a folder that's sites available, and then we symlink to another folder called sites enabled, and then every site that we have actually gets its own file in there.
No,
That's
I see.
alexjolie.com.configuration.
So
You
each
know,
get their own Cadify then, if that's what you
so well,
or
because the way
or
Caddy works, it's kind of tough to say. The way Caddy works is that we bring in all these files and we do a Caddy reload. And so Caddy, the binary, will then grab the Caddy file, and in there we say import. That's the tag. We import this file, import this file, import this file. And so Caddy actually takes all of those and makes one massive Caddy file, and then reads that configuration. So
uh,
we can split it out into folders for like organizational purposes, but it's actually one file when Caddy reads it. It literally just smashes it all together and then looks at it.
so it's like each. So then it's more like in programming, you have each modules, and then you now have the main entry points. Just import all the necessary ones, and then Caddy generates like maybe a dynamic file from it that it just
Yeah,
reads from.
yeah,
Okay.
that's right. Yeah. Ultimately, Caddy, it can read the Caddy file and that, but it actually converts it to a JSON file. And it converts it to this really, really big JSON configuration file. And you could program Caddy directly with JSON, but I just haven't. We've just been using the Caddy file because it works really well for us.
Well, for people that don't know Caddy, so I think Caddy is a web server, and you can use it beyond just a CDN. I think it's one of the popular
Absolutely.
ones people run on their VPS. I think, yeah, maybe Nginx is also another one. You know,
I believe it's very popular. Yeah. Yeah. I discovered Caddy because I when I started this whole project, like I said a couple of years ago, I was looking at all the different options that exist, and there's so many. There's Apache and there's Varnish and there's Nginx has that, and then Traffic Server was a new one. Um, but as soon as I came across Caddy and I saw the ease of configuration, I was sold, basically.
yeah, but I think there are two types of Apache servers. So there's the Apache server, which is very similar to Kadi, and the one you mentioned that I also tried last month was Apache Traffic Server, which I think is dedicated more as a cache proxy. So that means
Okay.
you don't have to install an extra module to get caching involved. It just comes built in with the server and acts as a proxy.
I see. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah, I didn't
Because
realize that.
Yeah, because I think they are very different projects. And also in the Apache Foundation, they are also creating a new um, something they call traffic control. So they are trying to use the traffic server and building like a sort of CDN. So traffic control is more like a control tower. You know, you have the control plane, you have observability on it, and you can do various things in it. But felt very complicated, and I only
Okay.
just try to use the traffic server to do what I want.
Yeah. Yeah, I see. Yeah, I think folks are intimidated by Caddy. I want to share a little snippet of our Caddy file that's running in production. Um,
It's quite interesting how you are not bothered about sharing company.
let's go. No, the more the better. I think there should be more CDNs out there. I think there should be more competition. It's a very small space. Yeah.
Yeah, I tried to talk to
Oh,
someone from I think maybe Fastly or Akamai, and maybe the way I positioned my request, they sounded like, okay, no, we are not interested in this. We think it's not good for our business, and I was just worried that people would think it's more like doing it to get a competitor, but you
yeah.
know, it's a different if you talk about it than doing the actual work because it costs money to set up these things. You need experience as well.
hmm Yeah, yeah. I mean, I there was I don't remember who it was that you had talked to, um, but they worked for a larger company or something, or maybe they used to work for a larger company, and they said something like, yeah, if you have less than 20 pops and you're talking about the edge, you're not really at the edge. And I was like, what value does that comment bring? That's so silly. Come on. Oh, come on.
Ah,
It's like we're here to serve traffic and we're gonna do good and like we're gonna get more pops. We're
yeah,
gonna build to that. This is how we get there.
I think it was Robin Max from Akamai, and
Okay.
when he said that, I knew like, okay, I think Alex would not agree with this because yeah, they don't have large network like Akamai, so uh,
Right. Yeah.
it's more opinionated what you decide to say. Okay, because we need this amount of system, we should call it this. So
Right.
it's
I
different people with different bias.
That's yeah, that's right. And you know what? I don't fault anybody for it. I would defend my company too. That's fine.
Yeah.
But I just want to run through this file a little bit. This is the Caddy file that's running my personal website right now. This is the snippet of the Caddy file anyway. So I actually own Alex Joseph Lee and alexjoelee.com. And so that's why you see Alex Joseph Lee, www.alexjosephlee. And then we have the non-www version. And so I'm saying for these three URLs, I want to redirect them to https alexjoelee.com, www.alexjoelee.com. That's where I want to serve my website from. And you see a lot of these import snippets, import, import, import. Um, import default, we have set up in Caddy, there's something called snippets. And actually, I just wrote a blog post about this in the Skip2 blog. And you're able to define just a snippet of a Caddy file that's reusable, right? And so when I say import default, it's actually importing like 7 or 8 lines of configuration one of the lines just says log, one of the lines says cache, one of the lines, and I even started to list it out here in the comments. One of the lines says enable HTTP2 push, inject default platform headers. So there's some headers that Skip2 returns, some HTTP headers for tracking and for logging purposes. So when I write import default, it's actually calling a snippet of the caddy file that I created, and it's just putting it there. Every time I call import, that's just importing a different part of the caddy file. But then beyond, you don't need that. You could just write log and then write cache, and that would be fine. But if you look here, I mean, this is where caddy starts to really be magical, because you write redir, redirect, right?
Yeah.
And I'm saying for all these websites, this is what I want to do. It's in this bracket. Redirect to this HTTPS. So it's going to use HTTPS instead when it rewrites. It's going to use the www when it rewrites. And then you have this bracket here at the end. It's URI. So if somebody went and just punched in alexjolie.com/blog, it would actually rewrite this request and to be https://www.alexjolie.com/blog. So it would be able to fully rewrite the request, maintaining what you were actually requesting if you were to come to the website that way. And it's all like caddy just takes care of this stuff. It's so much better, because if you look at, these are such weird problems and such niche problems that you don't run into unless you're really messing with Nginx, or you're messing with a web server or a reverse proxy. And it's like, wow. And to solve this problem in Nginx, it's a lot harder.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I never tried Nginx directly. I mean, trying to configure it. So,
yeah.
And the other parts of the, I see, like, I didn't
So
really understand what the route code does.
Yeah. So this, where you see KORD5,
Yeah.
this is actually a location. That's one of our pops.
Okay, I see.
Any kind of identifier like this 4-letter and a number, that's a pop. And we go off of the International Civil Aviation. They have a bunch of airport codes, and we just use those. So CORD 5 is actually Chicago. And so what this import route CORD 5 is actually doing is it's saying for all of the traffic that isn't already returning, we're going to route it to our pop in Chicago on the internal. So this it's kind of tough to explain, but so if you imagine this caddy file is running everywhere. So if a request comes in for alexjolie.com to Miami, the server in Miami is going to see route to CORD 5. Okay, and that's because my website's hosted, in theory, I was doing this testing where my website was going to be hosted in Chicago. And so I wanted it to go, the traffic to be routed with multiple steps. So that goes from the user, the request, to the edge server, and the edge server says, okay, I've got a whole bunch of stuff here. I'm going to return that, but there's a few things that need to go to the origin. And that, instead of going straight to the origin, is actually going to go to Chicago, to our other pop in Chicago first, and then it'll go to the origin. And the reason for that is because it's faster if we can go over our own network. That's all. Yeah. So this basically says, it goes user to edge to basically the edge pop closest to where I host my server, and then to my server. And that's how routing works. That's how that snippet controls all sorts of different stuff on our network for routing websites around. And then the rest of these, I mean, there's a lot of header stuff. So we have this one in code. This is where we're enabling compression in real time, where we're saying if the browser will accept it, let's use Z standard compression. If not, we'll use Brotli compression. And if not, we'll use gzip compression. And if none of those, then we just won't compress the data. But that's a browser header thing that they request. And then down here, this is more.
I think you are one of the few people that are already doing ZSTD compression, because many CDNs don't do that.
I think you're right. And there's so many of these things that is just because of caddy. Caddy comes with it out of the box, and I don't have to. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing software. And I can't say enough good stuff about it. So these 4 snippets are just headers. It's just adding X content type options header, X frame options header, refer policy header. Don't need to worry about too much of those. It's just security headers that I'm adding on. They're optional, really.
Do you
and
already?
Then here's where. Oh. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, go on.
So I was going to say, after the traffic has been routed through to Chicago, this is what Chicago would do. This is what Chicago would see. So that's where we have reverse proxy, and reverse proxying all traffic actually to Vercel, where I'm hosting my personal website right now. And we actually, because we were adding the host header. So we are saying in the reverse proxy, we're going to add the header going upstream to Vercel that we're requesting www.alexjolie.com. And that's kind of a way that you can, kind of a way you can specify what website you want to see. And then when we're serving that content back down, we're actually adding a cache control header that keeps it keeps a cache for a real long time, because my website's very static and doesn't change much.
So does it do this cache control for every request from this website, or does it do it only when there's no cache control header?
So this will do it when there is, this will do it no matter what, in this case, the way that I have it configured for my website, right? And that's optional, but I particularly wanted all of my website to be cached all the time.
So if you do this from Skip2, would you be able to configure how, like by default, if there's no cache control, how long you want to cache it, or on
Yeah,
Skip2 everything is cached for very long?
Skip2. So you determine how much you want to cache it, and you can add cache headers as
Okay.
you would like to. So if your application doesn't have them and you don't want to add them, you can even customize it and say for all images or for all documents, I want to cache them, but not for the HTML itself, or maybe not for CSS. You can customize
Okay.
that, and we'll be able to add them.
Oh, that's interesting.
So
I think it's this is the first time I've had like a little bit of a deep dive into Caddy. I never tried it, so I know I hear good stuff about Caddy. Traffic was one that
yeah.
became really popular some years ago, especially when Docker and Kubernetes was starting to gain ground, and
Oh
I was
yeah,
like,
yeah,
oh, maybe Traffic. So I think
yeah.
for the Caddy server, what we are using for the caching, I think is Suin or Soin. I'm not sure how it's called. So
Suin, I think, Souin. Yes. Um, and yeah, that Suin is a caddy server module. So we were
yeah,
talking about that a little bit, how you can generate caddy binaries with custom modules. And Suin is that caching module made by Dark Week, pretty
yeah.
awesome developer.
So
I'll put those couple links.
for folks that are curious about Dark Week and Soin, we would have him live in 2 weeks. So you should join the conversation. And I'm
Good.
curious. So I think we'll talk about Caddy a bit, talk about Suin, but also go. Maybe he would also go deeper into the RFC because he's also a professor in France. So maybe he
Oh
would.
wow,
Yeah,
I didn't even realize that. That's awesome.
yeah. Maybe I mean maybe he does part-time teaching, but I know I was trying to get him on, and he was very quite busy, like with his classes. But I
Okay.
managed to get him booked for the first week of September. So we are going to talk about RFC. So if you are nerdy enough to want to understand how HTTP caching works, all the semantics, join that call, and maybe we would go deeper into it. And yeah, I guess it might be fun for some people, and for some people might be quite boring.
But for me, that sounds like a fantastic conversation. I can't wait. I'm looking forward to
Yeah,
that one.
yeah. After our Twitter conversation, I downloaded I went to get the RFC 911 spec. I read one. I can't remember the number, but that was the one that was defining the targeted CDN control uh,
Yeah.
headers, and then the RFC 911 I think is an evolution of the 7234. So I think this all came out around 2022. So I'm not
Yeah.
sure how
Yeah.
the
It's all new.
browsers, yeah,
Yeah. No, it's new, and it's, I think, who is it? MDN, Mozilla, keep a good browser compatibility chart of all of these different
Oh,
RFCs. And so you can see, yeah, no, I don't actually think most of the browsers are compatible with the RFCs yet, but we're ready. We're ready for it because, and again, because of Caddy, because of Suin, right?
yeah,
I didn't have to worry about creating that software myself, but I get to,
to
kind
use
of have
it.
that benefit. It's great. Yeah.
I think most of these big CDN have very customized servers and proxy layers. So catching up with these things, it's harder. The community might have built a model, but they can't just use it because they have very customized build of either Nginx or Varnish.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Or I mean, there's Nginx Pro, or there's the Varnish. I forget what they call it. It's the professional version of Varnish, and those cost tens of thousands of dollars. And
Like,
Caddy's just here. It's ready, And I think people should definitely play around with it, play around with the different modules, check it out because it's really powerful, and it's really, once you get the hang of it, it's almost fun to like write the configuration files. It's just so easy.
yeah, awesome. So we are quite on time, or a
Yep.
bit over time. We'll just spend maybe 5 minutes to wrap up. Uh, I have one question I would like you to answer, which is, should people build their own CDN? Not CDN like Cloudflare, but in your own case, like, just the content delivery. Maybe as a business, if you have like huge customers and you want to do it yourself, or you want to also start your own project. Maybe there's different reasons.
Yeah. Yeah. I think people should. I think there's nothing to prevent them from basically building a CDN. Like I said, we're limited by physics, right? And so as long as you get a few points of presence, relatively distributed, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to have 4,000 points of presence to serve traffic quickly. You just don't. And if your use case calls for CDN and it seems like something that you want to build in house, or it seems like maybe if you're trying to build a competing product or whatever, go
Yeah,
for it. I think it's something that there's absolutely still enterprises and large companies today that are maintaining their own CDNs, and it might be 6 pops, right? It might not be much at all, but that's how they serve content. That's just what they use,
I
and so
think
they call it their content delivery network.
I think Barney started like that, just maybe 5 or 10 servers, and then slowly started expanding.
Yeah, yeah, I believe you're right. Yeah, and I listened to a podcast with them too, and uh, yeah, it was just, I had this problem and I started to solve it in house, and I realized that people would pay for it.
Yeah.
People also had the problem. Yeah.
I have maybe one more questions would be, uh, just so wrap up the show. What
Yeah.
books are you currently reading or would
Uh,
recommend?
Man, I'm reading a lot of product books, a lot of business books. Let me open I'm an Audible guy. Let me go through my Audible library really quick.
Then I'm
Uh,
curious what you recommend, because I'm also at the moment focusing on more business books
okay.
or product
Um,
as well.
The SaaS Playbook by Rob Walling. Have you heard of Rob Walling and Startups for the Rest of Us?
Yeah, I'm in the
Okay.
Slack. I'm on the what's
You're
it
a
called?
micro confer.
Yeah, Microcom Slack.
I'm there too. Absolutely.
Okay, maybe I'll find you
Um,
there.
yeah. That one's an excellent book. Um, Alchemy by Rory Sutherland. He's
Yeah,
a marketing guy, and that one's a really
I
interesting
was
book.
just listening to him today as well. I was considering getting the book.
Yeah. Selling the Invisible, Harry Beckwith. That book I've probably listened or read through like 4 times, and each time I pick up something new from it. It's a really good book.
Selling the Invisible.
Yeah, Selling the Invisible, and that was by Harry Beckwith.
Henry or Harry?
Harry, Harry,
Ah, okay.
and then Beckwith, Beckwith. Yeah, those are some of my top recommended ones. Other than that, I mean, there's so much good technological reading for CDN and caching nowadays. Like everybody's kind of putting out content about the edge and about all that stuff. So I keep an eye on like Fly.io's blog, or
Awesome.
Fastly's blog, stuff like that. It's good.
Oh, actually, I never tried checked Fastly's blog. just fly.io and Cloudflare. That is
Okay.
also
Yeah.
where I keep tabs with. I love what the guys at fly.io are doing as well.
Yeah, I like Fly.io. They're cool. Very cool.
So you would
Uh,
recommend, so for sales book, it would just be this selling the invincible.
yeah, that book's really good about kind of assigning value to software solutions and software sales and stuff that's intangible.
Okay.
It's not. I'm not selling you a cup of coffee. I'm selling you this solution. It's that one's really good. Alchemy. That one's, like I said, very marketing focused. And then the SaaS playbook. That one's covers everything. That's one of the most powerful books for building a company, laying out a plan of like, how do I want to market it, and what are the details of the specific channels I want to get into. The SaaS Playbook by Rob Walling is excellent.
If I would also mention, apart from this author, I would also recommend Seth Godin.
Yes.
Seth
Yep. The Purple
Godin,
Cow.
yeah.
Yeah.
This is marketing Purple Cow. I also got
Okay.
the Deep recently. It's more like knowing when to quit. So I've
Yeah.
got the Deep. Have it
Okay.
here,
I gotcha. That's cool.
and yeah, quite like him and Rory are for me like two very smart, marketing, advertising guys. I like
Oh
to
yeah.
hear them talk. Very unique perspective.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just recently discovered Rory, and it's been like mind blowing. I was like, wow,
Yeah.
great stuff to listen to. So
Yeah. So I thank you so much for the time, giving us a tour of the product, the architecture, talking about CDNs. Maybe if you guys go further as well with Skip2, we can do another episode and see how it has evolved.
yeah.
And where would listeners find you, or what would you like to plug for them to, find your work?
You can find me personally on any social media as at Alex Jolie, and
Okay.
then you can find Skip2 on pretty much any social media as at Skip2 Networks, which I just put in the chat too, and YouTube chat.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
and then you can find Skip2 at skip2.net. We're there. We're still in beta, but if anybody's interested who's listening out there, we can start serving traffic for you right away. Just send us a note. But we're still building out kind of the front end application for people to sign up, and I think we'll be launching into our open beta before the end of the year. So
Oh, cool. Awesome.
yeah,
So that's it for today. Join us again next week. Next week we have a bit of a DevOps topic or platform engineering. This is not so much about CDN, but maybe since we're talking about building system, probably might be a good segue to talk about platform engineering. And then the week after that, I have Dark Web talking about HTTP caching and CDN and the RFCs, and that might be a bit more technical as well. So subscribe to the channel and see you next week. Bye bye.